Judge Frank Caprio was more than just a local judge in Providence, Rhode Island. He became a worldwide figure of kindness and compassion. For decades, he presided in the Providence Municipal Court, but his courtroom became famous because of his humanity. People around the world watched his clips, admired his compassion, and respected him as the kindest judge in America. On August 20th, 2025, Judge Frank Caprio passed away at the age of 88 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. His death brought sadness not only to his family and community, but also to millions of people across the globe. His passing was covered by national and international outlets, and tributes poured in from leaders and ordinary citizens alike. Among the many people grieving was someone who had stood by him for years, Officer Tony. Their friendship became known because viewers of Caught in Providence saw them together in countless episodes. At the funeral, Tony's reaction showed shock and deep grief. Later, he shared a short tribute that expressed his love and respect for Judge Caprio. This narration will look at Judge Caprio's legacy, his final moments, his friendship with Officer Tony, the shock of his passing, and Tony's heartfelt tribute. Frank Caprio was born in Providence in 1936. He built his career as a lawyer, a teacher, and later as a municipal judge. But what truly defined him was not just his position. It was how he used it. His courtroom became a symbol of mercy. In many cases, he forgave fines or reduced penalties when he saw people struggling. He would listen carefully to their stories. If a single mother explained she had to choose between paying a ticket or buying food for her children, Judge Caprio would often forgive the ticket. If an elderly man on a fixed income explained he could not pay a fine, Judge Caprio would adjust it. These moments were recorded and broadcast through Caught in Providence, first on local television and later online. The clips went viral. Millions of people from different countries shared them because they showed something rare. A judge who was not just enforcing the law, but living out compassion. Judge Caprio always repeated one lesson he had learned from his father. You cannot go through life without helping people. That line became his guiding principle, and it defined his career and his reputation. One of the most familiar faces in his courtroom was Officer Tony. He appeared regularly during cases, and the audience often saw how Judge Caprio interacted with him. Their exchanges were lighthearted, respectful, and genuine. Over time, viewers began to notice their chemistry. Judge Caprio and Officer Tony worked side by side in a rhythm built over years. The judge would ask for input, Tony would respond, and sometimes the moment would spark laughter. But beyond the humor, there was trust. For Judge Caprio, Tony was not just an officer in the courtroom. He was a colleague and a friend. Their friendship gave the courtroom a warm atmosphere, showing the bond between law and humanity. It became clear to many viewers that their relationship was real, not staged for the camera. In December 2023, Judge Caprio publicly announced that he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He spoke honestly about his health, but also with hope and faith. He thanked people for their prayers and said he was living each day with gratitude. His illness was difficult, but he faced it with courage. Family members described him as strong and positive. Even in his final months, he remained focused on encouraging kindness. On August 20th, 2025, he passed away surrounded by family. He was 88 years old. The news of his death spread quickly. Messages of condolence came from across the United States and from other countries. People remembered not only his rulings but his character. The funeral mass was held at the Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul in Providence. It was attended by family, friends, city officials, community members, and ordinary people who wanted to pay respects. His sons gave eulogies, sharing stories about his life and his values. The family also played a recording of Judge Caprio's own voice, in which he spoke about the importance of compassion. This gave the audience one last reminder of his message. Lines of people attended the calling hours. The funeral procession, moved through Federal Hill, and crowds stood silently in respect. It was a moment where the entire community paused to honor the man who had given them so much kindness. At the funeral, one of the most emotional sights was Officer Tony's reaction. People who had watched him for years with Judge Caprio could see his pain. Standing near the family and colleagues, Tony looked visibly shaken. His face showed the weight of the moment. His eyes were filled with grief, and he bowed his head in silence. For someone who had stood beside the judge day after day, this was not just the passing of a public figure. It was the loss of a mentor and a dear friend. Viewers who later saw clips of the funeral noticed how deeply affected he was. Tony's shock and silence captured the grief of everyone who admired Judge Caprio. It became one of the most discussed aspects of the ceremony because it reflected the personal side of this loss. When he was asked to share a few words, Officer Tony gave a tribute. His words were short, but they carried deep meaning. He said, "Judge, you were more than the robe you wore. You were a teacher, a mentor, and a true friend. Working beside you every day was an honor. You showed me that justice is not just about rules, but about understanding people. You taught me patience, kindness, and fairness. I will never forget the lessons you gave me, and I will carry them for the rest of my life." These words summed up years of friendship and respect. For Tony, Judge Caprio was not only a leader in court, but also a guide in life. His tribute gave voice to what many others felt, that Judge Caprio's influence went far beyond the courtroom. The community's mourning was wide and heartfelt. Streets were lined with people during the procession. Online, social media was filled with clips of Judge Caprio's courtroom moments, with captions thanking him for his kindness. People from around the world wrote messages saying how his words had touched them. Many said his approach gave them hope in humanity again. Others shared that they had learned life lessons from simply watching him interact with ordinary people in his courtroom. For many, Officer Tony's emotional tribute became symbolic. It showed how someone who had worked closest to Judge Caprio felt the loss, and it reminded everyone that behind the public figure was a man deeply loved by those who knew him best. Judge Frank Caprio's passing marked the end of an extraordinary life of service. His legacy is not in the fines he issued or the cases he handled, but in the compassion he showed. He lived by the principle that helping others is the highest duty. The friendship between Judge Caprio and Officer Tony was one of the clearest examples of his humanity. Tony's shock and grief at the funeral reflected how deeply Judge Caprio impacted the lives of those around him. His tribute served as a reminder of the personal bonds that shaped his career. As people continue to remember Judge Caprio, his lessons remain alive. Treat others with fairness, listen with compassion, and live each day with kindness. His courtroom may now be silent, but his message continues in the hearts of all who admired him, including his friend, Officer Tony.